So often people say I am against showing, because I do sports. I can be critical about showing. That doesn't mean I'm not critical about people doing sports either.
Mm.
This is but I am critical towards showing in a few perspectives. And it's not because I'm against it, but because I think it's incomplete. And I think that if you understand the sports that we are doing, my Dutch Stafford Athletics that I organize and in all countries, it's a very simple tool to to test dogs in the diversity of the breed. And that means that it's often translated wrongly by people. The way they say, if you look at the Dutch Stafford Athletics, that it's made to develop a supreme sporting dog or whatsoever, which is one of those things in people's minds who are going into the extremes. It's completely not about that. The Dutch Stafford Athletics is to say, okay, listen. For instance, you breed a little bit of stocky, bully type Staffordshire Bull Terrier, a bit on the heavy side for some, even for others, a little bit on the light side, but it's a little bit stocky. He's in the 15-inch range, and that's what you prefer. Then the Dutch Stafford Athletics gives you the opportunity to develop that your breeding and to say, okay, if I put that to a physical test, I can actually put testimony on it. I say, listen, this is where I am, and that is the biggest problem in dogs. People think or want to put across that they all have the chicken that lays the golden eggs, which is absolutely not the case. You have to be critical about your own dogs, and you have to say, okay, listen, I'm going to put this dog to the test. And if you put the dog physically to a test, you can say, okay, listen, this is with the quality of my breeding at the moment. Doesn't say anything that is not breed typical. Doesn't mean that it cannot win a show. It doesn't mean that it isn't a good pet. Doesn't mean that it isn't a great companion or whatever. It just say, listen, the quality of the physical aspects and the mental aspects of the dog are measured in this level. So if I want to improve on that, and that's where it starts, if I want to improve on that, and from my humble opinion, the question would come, who wouldn't? You know? But if you want to improve on that, I can use this system and say, listen, I'm here today. I'm going to check where I am next year, see if there's some improvement possible. And then I'm going to see if I can breed dogs, which are of my preferred type, that can do better. And to me, that's the idea behind the Dutch Stafford Athletics. It's not the idea that I say, okay, we got these dogs, and let's point out which one is the ultimate supreme sporting dog. Which is a complete ridiculous idea, because the canine world is so diverse in its quality that you cannot say, oh, okay, this is a supreme dog. You can't. You can only say, okay, and for the Stafford Athletics, what we made, it is not to prove which has the best whippet. It is to say, okay, listen, we have a system that can help you improve the type that you prefer without any opinion about what that type is. And then we have on each annual event, we ask a judge to come over and to judge the dogs that we put across, just to check, are we also still within the understanding of the breed standard? Do we still follow where you guys are want to go? And not just that we look at our own perspective. We just say, no, we want that judge to come over and say, listen, this is the dogs that we use. This is the dogs where we work from. What are your critiques? And that's very important. I just saw, I read a magazine. It came in today, yesterday. It was the Stafford from the Dutch club, and there was a show result, and 90% of the dogs received an excellent, an excellent. If everybody understands what the meaning of that word is, received an excellent. It's complete ridiculous. It doesn't mean I'm going to give you any critique that can you help you improve on breeding, that helps the breeder of your dog on breeding or whatever. It says only everything is perfect, but my personal preference is that dog. What is the value of that? Can I be critical about that? And it's not doesn't mean I am against showing. I want to see a dog show, and then you say, okay, the one that wins is the excellent, and which means that in the comparison, because that is what it's about, when the second one, when the second one becomes second, it can't be an excellent compared to the first. It means that you have spotted something that you don't like. It means that you spotted something that doesn't fit that breed standard. And it cannot be that you say, we put 100 dogs in a room and all of them are exactly in your own view of that breed standard fitting it. It's not possible.
Mhm.
It's not possible. It's a complete. It's only petting people. Oh, you got an excellent dog. Yes, yes. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, thank you. Bye, bye. You got an excellent dog. You got an excellent dog. Okay, I like this one better. What's the value of that?
Mhm.
A breeder should be critical. I remember I once had a conversation, and it was a very valuable conversation. And a judge gave one of my dogs a very good, which is there's nothing wrong with it. It's a very good, it's a very good specimen of the breed. But I just wanted to know the exact whys, and he explained that to me, and we had a good talk, and we had a good talk over the dog, and that was his view on the dog. So I learned a lot. I didn't learn when somebody say, "Oh, I love your dog." Oh, that's a waste of money. That's a waste of money. If you go to the Netherlands, you go to a dog show, you pay something in between 50 to 75 euros, and somebody says, "Oh, I like your dog." I'm not there to say, "Do you like my dog the way I like it?" I want you to tell me what's wrong with the dog. What is in your view? What are my points of improvements? Where should I look at? But the dog showing doesn't do that anymore. It doesn't do it anymore. It's only you should not insult anyone. You shouldn't step on any toes because you might not be asked to judge and somewhere else. And in the foundation of that system, something is wrong. And I think it's very very important to put that across and to give that signal and say, listen, if you want to have dog showing and give it any value, be critical. But if you want to do dog shows, I once was judging in Norway, and I gave a dog a very good. And the person came to me and was really upset. And she said, "Well, this is the first time that the dog received a very good." I said, "Well, maybe it's the first time someone has been honest." you know, what a ridiculous! It cannot be. It cannot be. If you give every dog an excellent in that perspective, you need to be critical. And what our sports does is say, and that's a very very good thing in my book, is that it takes away the opinion. It takes away the opinion, and when you take away the opinion, you're heading towards facts, and you cannot say the dog. Well, for instance, a person walks on a show, and he says, and the judge says, the dog doesn't reach out in his steps, for instance. And then when you put it on the test and you put it on a 10-mile race, that should be visible. You should say, okay, let's put it on the test. But it makes everything and everybody's opinion very fragile. And that's what I have experienced over the years talking to people, is that because we have collected for 17 years now, we have collected scores of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dogs. But we also put them to show, and we also filmed them how they moved, and we also did all these stuff that we say, okay, what is efficient movement? What is efficient movement? And what is efficient movement in the purpose of the breed? For instance, what is the efficient movement? Why would you trot with a dog, for instance? Why would you trot with a dog that has to perform in a four by four box? What's the purpose of it? So why would you judge it in any way? Doesn't make any sense. And all these things are leaving. Back in the day, I remember back in the day, back in the 80s, that I was talking to people, and that was when I was young. The people had conversations about it. They say, okay, but how does it do? I say, well, I went next to the bike, and but after 10 minutes, 10 or after 10 kilometers, it get out of air. So we need to check. We didn't have all the physical things that are available today. But the results in my book of the dogs were a lot better than we see today. So to point, what I'm trying to point out is saying it's not showing is on its own isn't good. Dog sports alone does not lead to good breed preservation. So we need to say we should stop dividing the stuff and say, listen, where can we help? You know, if I organize a Dutch Stafford Athletics and I organize a judge, and I say, listen, I want you to come over and I want you to judge, and then they say to me, what should I keep in mind? I say, well, there's only one excellent, and that's for the one that wins it.
Yeah.
And then they look at me. They say, yeah, that's what we want. If the dog that that points out best, that's excellent. That's what excellent should mean. And uh, on the other hand, we say be critical. You know, be critical. If you see something that you don't like, put it on the paper. Don't say oh nice and try to be friends, because we don't want that. We want to have. I prefer a harsh comment over a kind comment um, uh, with no, how do you say it, with no meaning. I want to have. Um, I prefer the harsh one. So that's how we do stuff. And um, if we look at the things in the dog world, and I think it's the same at your end, where everybody tries to say, no, this is a show line. Uh, there's no such thing. Doesn't exist. There's no show line in Stafford. Point out to me what's a show line. What does that mean? Point out to me that you say that's a sports line. Point it out. What is it? Have I got a sports line? Does that mean that my dogs can't be shown? Does it mean that somebody says I've got a show line? Does it mean that they can't sport? Why should there be a difference? The the thing with dogs in special, and the people involved, is always the way of thinking in extremes. Uh, where in fact we should all be happy with a normal pit bull terrier, uh, when we know what a normal pit bull terrier means, and that normal pit bull terrier should be great just as it is. It doesn't have to be exceptional. It doesn't have to be superb amongst all others. That's a ridiculous money making ego thing. You know, when you're into dogs, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
What's wrong with the average normal Staffordshire Bull Terrier? What's
Yeah.
wrong with it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So
No.
why are we all striving for this one perfect, superb example, trying to point at everybody that you are the one that has the most perfect example of a pit bull terrier or a Staffordshire Bull Terrier? What's the value of it in any ways? What's the value of it? If you just look at things and you just keep things normal and natural. When you look at normal people, they're not all the top models that you see on the media. We're not. None of us are. I'm
Yeah.
not. You're not. We're not. If you look around, it's not what you see.
I'm
They're
close.
normal people. And what's wrong with normal people? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing. Just simply nothing. It's the same in dogs. What's wrong with normal dogs? What's wrong with the normal golden retriever? Absolutely nothing.
No.
So when you, it's just taking away the extremes and understanding that everything which is as it is meant to be, it's good as it is, and it's of value. And if you look at the same, I always try to put things to material. You know, if you say, okay, if your bike has got square wheels, what's the worth of it? But
Yeah.
when it's a normal bike and it suits you, all right, then everything is all right, isn't it? Everything is perfect. And why is that not enough? Why is that not enough? It's not a question people should ask the breed, or people like me, or other dog people in the world. They should ask that to themselves. How come that you are only satisfied when you are being told that you've got the best? And then if somebody tells you who are the best, and then I come across the corner and I say, are you willing to prove that? Just bring the dog to the field, and are you willing to prove that what you say is true? Do you have the best specimen? I challenge in this podcast, Sean. I challenge everyone with the Staffordshire Bull Terrier or a Pit Bull Terrier top show dog. saying, listen, my dog is champion, to say, okay, come along and prove their worth.
Mm.
Come along and prove their worth. Are they really that good? And are you up to that? Are you open for that? Can you open your view and say, okay, yeah, well, my dog. So basically, it's that part where we say, okay, my dog is champion based on somebody else's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's make that same dog the best and the champion based on facts. If you can do that, then what have you got?
Yeah.
Then what have you got? One of my sayings is one of the things that I always put across to people, is that beauty is not about perseverance, but it's about what you feel when you persevere it. And
Yeah.
that's the core of things, you know. And if in my view, in my honest view, when you are the owner of a dog and you feel a lot of love for that dog, not for what it is, but for the winning it has done, I think you're a poor. There's a poor view of looking at things. In all honesty,
Yeah.
it's the thing is, that's not how things should be in my book. When you have your dog and you walk him and you clean up his shit from the street. That's what things are about. And when you go to a dog show, go to a dog show. Back in the day when I went to a dog show, I was very interested in certain people when they came over from all around the globe, and now I invite them myself. I was interested because I wanted to hear what they had to say about what I'm doing. So in that perspective, it was very connective. A lot of people connected through shows back in the day, and so it's of great value. But we must all be critical about the way things are going. And if you look at the evolution of dog showing, if I compare that uh, to the late 80s, when I got involved with these dogs, and I compare to it how dogs are judged now, it's incomparable in a matter that I think it's gone downhill.
Mm.
So we must give a critical sign and say, listen, guys, we're not heading towards uh, a better situation for the dogs. A better situation for the dogs, not a better situation for the way people see things the way they want to see things. A
Yeah.
better situation for the dogs. And if you look at the better situation for the dogs, there's only one thing very important, and that's that they're um, physical, capable of what they should be able doing as a dog,
Mm.
which means run for miles and miles and miles without getting tired, which means being fast, which means being able to hunt, which means being able to use their nose, which means a lot of these stuff, which means to cooperate with fellow specimen. All these things are important, and that's in general for dogs. That's what where dogs need to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you say, okay, listen, that's the total package, and that's what we should all keep in our mind. And the problem with the clubs is, and that's, and I understand that from one part, organizing dog sports now for 19 years in a row. I understand the difficulty of organizing dog sports, and I can imagine that when you organize a dog show and you got 2,000 dogs on the scene and you all want to test them on a lure race, and you got a little bit of problem. You won't be able to manage that. So I can understand that. That's not what it's about. But what the very good thing is that the Staffordshire Bull Terrier Club of the Netherlands, the official club that we have here, is also organizing race days where they can see if the dog still has a little bit of prey drive, willing to chase something. So even though from my view that those are small steps, but they're really important, and it shows that the club puts interest in it and say, okay, listen, we are organizing stuff. We got an from the Dutch Kennel Club. It's possible to do. They call it a UV test, which means that you can test the um, the endurance and the perseverance of your dog going 20 kilometers next to a bike, and they need to finish that without ruining their paws. You just need to train for that, just to toughen the paws to get there. So it's not that the system doesn't, that it there's nothing there. I think there are options there, but they are not as promoted as much as, and so it becomes a little bit who shouts the loudest that gets the most attention.
Yeah.
And for the moment, in dogs, we're not there because it's the sport is very simple. You got a 50% chance. It don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So there's nothing to shout out about. If I look at my good friend in Norway, Thor and Annette, man, they've their dogs are amazing. The dogs that they breed is absolutely fantastic. Look into the dogs. The way they perform is mind blowing. They're not on top of the world shouting how fantastic their dogs are. They know they're just interested, and they hope that the next generation will follow up where they started off with, because that's how they look at themselves. They're willing to maintain the quality that they have, or even when possible, try to improve without losing their view on breed type. It's amazing. And that's, to me, that's very, very appealing, very interesting, just to follow and to see. But nobody in our circles is patting themselves on the shoulder saying, oh, look how good we are.
Yeah.
Those that do, they leave quite fast, because there's no ground for people like that in our community. We just say, we're here for the dogs, not for your ego.
So talk about specifically your Staffordshire Bull program, because it's fantastic. Obviously, your dogs are awesome, uh, and just from my perspective, I know that y- y- when you're in the one working it, you have a different critique. You're constantly trying to evolve. But from my perspective, it's really fantastic to see, and really enjoyable to witness from afar. Um, uh, this subject is really interesting to me, and we kind of touched upon it from the first interview. I remember, and I have a little bit more knowledge now, right? Uh, but uh, talk about what um, line breeding, inbreeding, and outcrossing, what those things have meant to your program, and when those are important, and when those are things that you have to really think about or not do.
Well, Paul, line breeding, outcrossing, inbreeding. Um, um, the best things I have done in the past was quite harsh inbreeding, brother sister matings. Um, the reason that turned out to be the best is that it gave me very fast a view in what was good and what could be better, or should be excluded to move on with. Um, the harshness of these things are not for everybody. That must be said. Uh, if you're not willing to say, okay, I need to do some harsh selection here, don't go into inbreeding. Don't do it. That doesn't make any sense. For me, it's always been very valuable, uh, because I grew up with this very simple saying that if you want to breed dogs, you have to be as tough as Mother Nature, and if you can't, you shouldn't get involved. And now I also understand that that's a thing that you can't put that in everybody's backpack. Uh, but for me, it worked quite well, and I raised my children just exactly the same. If you can't be that tough, don't do it. Um, the inbreeding has been very valuable. I always do line breeding because all the majority of the dogs in the pedigree are basically on all of our own. They're our own dogs. Even when you go back 9 generations in some pedigrees, all the dogs involved are our own, or we knew them very good in that perspective. And so we always do a certain amount of line breeding. Um, the rules at the moment thrown up by the Kennel Club, uh, where they limit inbreeding, but also line breeding. In that perspective, well, line breeding as seen as a lighter form of inbreeding, and line breeding in the core is a little bit different, but in the sentence of not as harsh inbreeding, line breeding is also well been put to an end with a lot of kennel clubs, which is in my view, is a complete wrong choice that they made to do so. But it's again, nobody wants to uh, be responsible anymore. So when things are harsh, a lot of people walk away from stuff. Right? Inbreeding is a very good tool to get to the core of the quality of your stock in such a way, when you're willing to test it and when you're willing to very harshly exclude it. You know, I've bred very beautiful dogs where I thought, oh my god, these are absolutely stunning, who were after a little test directly excluded from any form of breeding, for the very simple fact that in the main cases from the lines that where we started off with, and that's where you go. What we find out is that the circulation wasn't the best, and when the circulation isn't good, you got no good dog. You must be honest about that. So you need to say, okay, we're going to quit with that. It's not going to worth. It's not worth moving on with. It's for one of the reasons. One of the most famous dogs I have bred for the majority of people. His name is Quinlent Superman, and Quinlent Superman he became a DSA champion by debut, which means that the first time that he did everything, he did it on championship level. So there was quite a test. He held the record for the 10 mile quite a few years. Uh, but still, I didn't breed a lot from it, for the very simple reason that he didn't perform the best as I could as soon as the weather became hotter than 20 degrees, which is a very clear signal that as soon as the temperature becomes above that level, a dog should still be able to perform very good at say 20 degrees Celsius, 20 and 24 degrees Celsius. The dog should still be able to perform. He was not capable of that, so I wasn't too fond on breeding from him. And the only breeding that I did from him that made any sense was a complete outcross. So there you have it, on the same spot. You have the reason and the importance of an outcross in a program, where you say, okay, listen, because what you do is what brings the core in that system. And of course, it must be known that the female used in that program was breathing as easy as could be. So then okay, then you have something. Checking back on the lines, you see that the majority of the dogs were very good at that part as well. So I say, okay, we're going to try that, and that worked out really good. And that's the value of outcrossing. Outcrossing, if you do it, well, for me, if I do it, I prefer to use the matter of what's known as gene migration, which means that what I prefer is to, for instance, what I did back in the day, the dogs that where we started off with, they were a mix of South African breeding with some Dutch, or some old Dutch lines. For as far as you can talk about that, of course, because they all come from England, so they're all English lines in the core. But they were bred for a number of generations and inbred for a number of generations in the Netherlands. Uh, those were the basics. But the problem that we already faced in the beginning is that they had some trouble on circulation. So What I did is I went looking for a breeder in the hottest place on the planet, and asking him for a breeding of dogs that could run over a day at his temperatures, understanding that if they can run with 50 degrees Celsius at his place, that it would fly over here. And there's a very simple way of thinking, looking at things, but that's what I did. That's what I did, and it was fantastic. Uh, these breeders let me talk, and let me decide about which combinations to be made, and they were really, really helpful, fantastic people. And that's then you come to another thing, uh, to sometimes you need to be lucky to come across the right people that actually help you improve on what you're trying to do. And these people did that fantastic, and we still uh, we are still grateful for that today. Really, really good. um, these these this female that we got from them, she made everything right in just 2 or 3 generations. We got completely rid of the problem. So um, that's valuable. That's valuable. And that way of gene migration, when something is completely inbred into certain qualities, and it doesn't have the problems that you are having, you will solve it when you put a proper selection on the pups. And that's where you come to the core of the system of breeding. The problem in inbreeding is not the fact that inbreeding is wrong, but people are not willing to put in the consequences of the inbreeding. And it's again, everybody in every combination is searching for the chicken that lays the golden eggs. They're all searching for the champion. Where we say, no, I'm not searching for the champion. I'm searching for uh, is flock. Is that the right word? I'm searching for a group of dogs which are capable of being what they should be capable of. So I look at more from a population perspective than that I say each combination that I do should bring me something superb. That's not. I'm not interested in that. If one specimen pops up which proved to be absolutely good looking or whatsoever, well, it's fun. But then we still need to bring it to the test to see how it works. And then if that something works, and you say, okay, I'm on my way to reach something. I'm on my way to improve. I can breed a dog that looks a little bit better than the ones that I start off with. And looking better doesn't mean pretty in that sense. It means it's closer to my ideal of the standard. And at this moment, I think we're quite solid in what we have, due to a very consistent way of putting these very simple principles on the dogs, and always test them. Always test the dogs. That's very, very, very important. Very important. Without it, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You can at this moment you have a lot of people shouting out, for instance, Sean, that they say, well, you need to test. You need to bring your dog to all sorts of medical tests. And uh, I'm very harsh when I say this, but I'm going to put it across, and I don't mean to any harm, but it's how I personally look at things. If you don't want to put in any effort, it's a very cheap way to get some results and to hide behind. You know, it's very simple. You just put down some in your country's dollars. Just put down some dollars, and you got a testimony that means nothing. Because when you the same with the problem with boas, that they have this uh, well, you know it from the Frenchies, I think. Uh, it doesn't exist in our sports. Well, how come that we and all the dogs that are involved in our group, that not one of them has it? It can't exist. It can't exist. We put them 10 miles next to a bike, and if they don't finish in say 15 minutes, they're no good. So it's just as simple as this. How beautiful they are, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
And you know what?
So the
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to
go,
interrupt.
Yeah, well, back to the inbreeding, line breeding, outcross. First thing, if what I do and what I've done is always look and I stand up to the consequences of it, which means um, and I'll put it to another other breed, for instance, where there's a lot of deafness in the litters. Yeah. One guy here in the Netherlands, he doesn't live anymore, but he started off with Dogo Argentinos, and he did a combination, and then he got 10 beautiful puppies, and then they need to go for the bear test to test, and then 8 puppies were deaf, and he was coming home with 2. That is a thing that you need to keep in the back of your mind, you know. And that's what responsible breeding is all about. Saying, okay, listen, is there a reason for these puppies to go into the society with the risk of their being bred again? And he made the right choice, unpopular choice, but I admire him for doing it, because he did the right thing. But it's a harsh thing to do when you but that's one of the things, that as soon as you don't know, you need to try, and you need to test, and you need to be saying, okay, and be willing to listen to the fact that it didn't work out the way you hoped. You did it with a certain view, but when it doesn't work out, you need to be as tough as Mother Nature is, and you need to say, okay, there's no room for dogs like this. You're making no one happy with dogs like this, and that's an important thing. And that's the thing, a lot of people forget. And as breeders, and I don't know how that is in the United States, but here in the Netherlands, when you are breeding dogs, you are a complete money wolf. You're only interested in money. Uh, the only thing that you want is to sell your puppies as expensive possible, and spend as less money as possible to make as much more money. And that's the view people have on breeders. Uh, they forget that you live with this job for 24/7, and that you spend all your money on getting the dogs what they need, and that at the end of the year, when you look under the line, that you say, "Oh, I didn't make any money. It cost me an awful lot of money this year." The people don't look at it when you're into dogs. So it's a perspective on dogs. It's a perspective on dogs breeding. Um, back to the question: inbreeding, out crossing. They all did very good for me, and everything is always based on the selection that you are willing to do, to make your own choices of breeding. You know, it is true that outcrossing uh, is a little bit safer for. Uh, but on the other hand, the way I look at it, every outcross is putting in 50% new diseases in each combination. You know, so on the as a breeder in the short run, it's easy. On the long run, if you haven't done any inbreeding, you still don't know what the genetic quality of your dogs really are. So that's how it is. I prefer both. So I have a very, very simple thing that I would advise everyone, Sean, and that is shut down the computer, throw away all the pedigree boards and everything, because they tell you nothing. Go and see the dogs. Go and meet the people. Go and talk to the breeders that had the dogs and that bred the dogs and they had the ancestors and everything, and go talk to them and ask them why they did the combination, to understand why the dogs in the pedigree, why they put them in there, and for what reason, to get a clear view of with what knowledge things uh, have been done. I know of certain dogs. They were bred, and um not with knowledge, but the owner just followed a small advice, didn't know what he was doing, and the outcome was for that for the perspective was for them was perfect, but it doesn't mean it was done with knowledge. So you still don't know what's there recessive in the gene pool. You don't know what it was. Just a luck. It was just luck, and that means that as soon as you find out that something is luck, you need to dig in deeper. You need to find out deeper. You need to contact the people. and you need to say, okay, listen, you got this dog. Can you tell me something about these dogs? Go and see the people. See if you can, in my view, see if you can check if how the dog works, how it does. And then you come to the very high importance of dog showing, is that what it was back in the day, and the internet took over for the worst of things, is that it was the place to meet the people who had the dogs, and that's gone. That's gone. The internet took that over, and that's not a good thing. You can be you can talk about pedigrees and know all the pedigrees without knowing nothing. That's today, because it's accessible. Back in the day, the database, they did not exist. You just had the well, even further in time, you only had the handwritten pedigrees. The things that the people did. So you were forced to look and visited the people, visit the dogs. You needed to travel, you needed to see, you needed to talk, and today it's all just look. Oh, see how the dog is bred. Oh, it's inbred to that line, so it must be good. Oh, it doesn't work like that. It's not. It doesn't work like that. It's not that one dog appears 4 times in a pedigree, that dog that you're using is the quality of the dog that has in it. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. And I had a talk with Alice and Ivan not so long ago, and they say, if you want to do something, you mix something into your line, you shouldn't just mix it in because it's different. You need to mix it in because it's utterly, utterly, utterly good. But you only find out if you search, and if you know. If one specimen is good into breeding, just one specimen is good, it means nothing. It has no value. If you have a litter of 10 and there's one good dog in it, you could question yourself about the recessive things that the dog is going to bring along. So you need to see the litter, and you need to see the parents, and then you need to see the grandparents if possible. You need to search. So um, um, the breeding, the breeding, and what would I say to all these people is stop reading pedigrees and start looking for dogs, and talk to people who had the dogs and who worked the dogs, or for instance, who showed the dog, how was the temperament of the dog in the ring. Everything doesn't matter where your interest is, but the principle should be in the same manner. You should say, okay, let's go and visit these people. Let's see where they're at. See if we can make an appointment to talk with see the dogs, because you want to build up something. That's what I would say to people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very yeah, yeah, very smart. I like that answer, and we can get so lost in this internet thing that we 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 think information is at our fingertips, but then we realize like uh, that it can only give us information. It can't really give us evidence, like firsthand evidence, and that is that's so important. Like I work in a field that is human based, right? And
Mm,
you I get these new college grads that come in they've read all these books about what presents itself with people with abnormal behaviors and you know mental health issues, and then they hit the ground and they realize, what am I seeing? This isn't in the book. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is real
mm,
life. Now you get the picture. Now you could throw everything out that you just read in that book. That just gives you an idea. It just gives you a snippet of what you're about to see and witness, because that's not the reality. So yeah, that's what the internet does. It just gives you the idea, but doesn't give you the reality. So yeah, and I have to remind myself, I fall victim of to that as well. Even though I'm 50 years old and I lived without the internet, as a kid, I still fall into that trap. So yeah, I've done a lot better uh reminding myself lately not to get out there and ask questions of people and actually get on the phone and talk and stuff like that. So yeah, Yeah, that's important to
It is. It
remind
is,
people.
and what you say, it is the same for me as well. The internet is very, very easy.
Yeah,
You can contact. It's the same as the podcast. You can reach a lot of people in one go. You just type out a message. If you look at my followers on Facebook and everywhere, it's one press of the button, and I can reach all these people. Um, but for somebody contacting me about the dogs that I have, when you just contact me about the dogs that I have or the dogs that I've bred that you are interested in when they occur in the pedigree, I can tell you about the dogs the way they were without saying, oh, uh, and that is as honest as honest as it is. And that's how I grew up within these dogs. Everybody did that back in the day.
yeah,
Everybody did that back in the day. It was normal because you couldn't go onto the internet and say, "Listen, what's the pedigree?" You need to go to the people that own the pedigree, just to put your eyes on it.
yeah.
You know, there was no access to it, and that made it very interesting. But it made it very better to really understand dogs, really understand the breeds, really understand the people involved and why they did certain things. And uh, yeah, that's what I would recommend to people. Just go out, go see dogs.
And I do have to say this because I will listen and watch people that have gotten the internet education with dogs, and some of them are really well spoken and really well read, and I don't want to dismiss that. But then I listen to people like yourself and people that have had the experiences that you've had, and the deeper understanding, the deeper knowledge is just shines through, and then you compare that. Then you compare your dogs to their dogs, and you say it just it's just tenfold better. You guys, and it's not, you just came from a different age. You had to rely on certain things that they didn't have to rely on, and it's almost became a crutch. You know what I mean? And they can talk all the right things and say all the right words and know all the right science, but to actually go hands on is a lot different and do the things that have been proven to work. It's telling when you see it, when you compare the both. And so I think
Well,
I, I think we can easily witness that now if we pay attention.
well, what I want to put across, Sean, and this, which I think is very important. Stepping in on what you say is try to go back um late 1800s, a moment where people still relied on the quality of dogs. They still needed the dogs to do their job, to put food on the table, to help the families, to do vermin control, do a lot of stuff. And there wasn't. uh, Try to imagine this. At that time, the veterinary service did not exist. It did not exist. Now what did the people do? They bred their dogs, and the dogs functioned all very well in their homes and in their family and in their community or whatsoever. They all did. Else they wouldn't be fed because that was very expensive back in the day. So if they managed to do a good job on the dogs, how come? How come? And everybody should ask themselves this because I've questioned this myself very many times. How come that we have a veterinary billion-dollar industry where back in 1870 it didn't even exist?
Mhm.
The veterinarians that could solve problems in dogs even occurred much later because the first university for veterinary practices was organized somewhere in I think it was 1878 or something like that. Yeah, and to control, this is a fun part, to control corona in cattle, because that was a big problem at the time.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. Anyway, the that's how the veterinary practice, the first university came about, and then it took decades before they started into all the other animals and the smaller animals. So, and nowadays veterinary practices are $1 billion industry around the world. $1 billion industry,
Hmm.
with all the knowledge that we have on the internet, with all the books we can read, with all. So it's not the knowledge that does it, is it? It's not the knowledge. It's not the test that we do at the vets, is it? It's the lack of common sense, and it's the lack of harshness that you need to have as
Yeah.
soon as you're involved into breeding. As simple as it is. As simple as it is. Tough people have tough dogs. Weak people have weak dogs. As simple as it is. Look, when you look at these the way these things are done back in the day, and when you look at the possibilities we have today, the things that we have available today, it's very hard to understand that we need the vet that much,
Hmm.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that a moral question that all the people involved in dog breeding should ask themselves?
Yeah. And you brought up a good point earlier, though, that it doesn't mean that the best is yet to come. I think it's not like we don't, like, good things aren't gonna come our way. I mean, we just have to muck our way through the system and just keep trucking along like you are, and hope that more people follow, and I think they will. I think eventually it's like a pendulum, you know what I mean? And you get too far one way, and it just has to meet in the middle some way, somehow. It just seems to, in a lot of ways, because nature has its way of just forcing its hand on sometimes, and so I do foresee that things will eventually uh, even out in some circles, that people will heed the message in some way. Um, of course, you're always going to have people that aren't, but that's besides the point. So, how have you, when, let's say, your first dozen years in the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and your passion with the breed, to now, how has your vision changed, or has it? What constitutes a, a solid Staffy Bull Terrier as far as looks? I'm talking size, structure, now than, say, back in your beginnings. Has it changed, and what has changed, or if it hasn't?
Um, uh, well, that's a good question, Sean. Uh, for me, for me, the point of my, well, the dog that I have in mind, uh, as my red line in Staffordshire, it's still the same dog. It's still the same dog. That didn't change. That's, for me, that's still the same. Um, uh, I didn't change anything about the dogs, but I changed my opinion a lot on society and the way society is headed. Um, um, it would be very, it's more and more difficult to find people that can deal with a high drive dog.
Mm.
It's very difficult. So from my perspective, and I breed dogs, and I prefer them to be a little bit on the high drive side of things, which means that they also have a certain amount of aggression in them. And then we've got all these people who are pampering dogs around, which one of the things, as soon as something has a little bit of aggression in it, you shouldn't be pampering them around. So it's quite difficult to find good owners for them. Actually, that's one of the things that I think is very hard. For me, the Staffordshire Bull Terrier from the ones from 1989 up until today are in my view should be exactly the same. I faced some troubles, honestly, which and I'm very happy to that I got grip on the situation, because many of the dogs became too small,
Mm.
and that's the downside of not having the possibility to do an outcross that you like.
Mm.
You know, when you breed in, they go back to the originals, which is very fun to say actually. Eberhard Trümler, he wrote that in his book, in one of his books. Uh, but the more your lines are compact, the more the dogs return to the originals. And some strains, they come from big dogs. So as soon as you inbreed, they go back to the big dogs. And unfortunately for me, uh, there were more small terriers than that there were the bigger ones. So the more my line closes in, the smaller my dogs are getting, so to speak. And that came to a point where I say, okay, I need to step in. I need to try a few things. And uh, I did that with an outcross on an outcross to an inbreeding, actually, to bring that up, and that gave me a dog that are putting my dog back into the sizes, so to speak. Because if people ask me what's your preferred size for sports, for instance, it's in the 14 to 16-inch range. That's for me, that's the perfect size for sports. If you ask me what's your perfect size for breeding, that's in the 16 to 18-inch range.
Mm.
There's a big difference in that.
Mm.
A dog of that size, say for instance, 17 inch, there's so much more room to whelp the pups than when they are 14-inch, for instance. Um, and then yeah, that's the experiences over all the years. You always have the exceptions to the rule. I also had a 14-inch female that pooped out 9 pups in 2.5 hours. The easiest whelping I've ever seen. In general, it isn't the case. We know the smaller the females are, the more trouble they have in the pups to pass. So for breeding, I prefer a little bit a bigger dog, and for sports, I prefer a little bit on the smaller side of our standards. Um, I must also say that um, uh, there's also a lot of controversy over size in Staffordshire Bull Terriers, where everybody is talking about the size of them, and how big they should actually be, and etc. It has no meaning. If you think you can achieve what you want to achieve with an 18-inch dog, why shouldn't you? But when you come to a dog show and you say, listen, I want to win the dog show, and somebody says, well, the dog is too big, then you have to accept that. And you won't win the dog show. It's as simple as it is. That freedom still exists. It's not that there's no freedom in things. There's a big freedom in things. And if you say, well, I prefer a Staffordshire Bull Terrier with all the qualities that makes a Staffy a Staffy, and I want them to be at that size because I prefer that size. So that's, for me, that works. Why shouldn't you? But don't go to a dog show and say, listen, I've got the perfect example of the breed, and I should receive an excellent. If you shouldn't receive an excellent, you should have the comment, your dog is too big.
Too big. Yeah.
It's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
And that's where all the talk about size should stop. If you think, well, if you like them bigger, okay, that means you can't win the show. Simple as it is.
Yeah.
But it's also the point of the judges. They shouldn't put up dogs that are too big. They shouldn't put them up. Simple as it is. They should say this is what the standard dictates. So we are judging the dogs to see if they fit the standard, and if they are too big, they don't fit the standard. Simple as it is. On the other hand, when you have a weight clause in your breed standard, like we have, there should be a weight scale on the side as well. You can't guess this. You can't guess the weight of a dog. No one can. No one can guess it. So you should say. And I knew judges back in the day who walked around with a measuring stick, and they said the dog needs to fit underneath. If they don't, it's too big, and I'll disqualify it. We'll send them out the ring. And that's fantastic if judges have the guts to do that these days. They do it these days. People are not used to that anymore. They're just used to being pampered all the time. But um, uh, on the controversy over size, it says you are free to breed the dog you want, but just it means that if you come to our place and you say, Marco, I've got an 18-inch dog, and then we say, okay, to get his black star for high jumping, for instance, you need to jump 4.1 times his body height.
Right.
It's the same as the 14-inch.
Right.
Same as the 14-inch. And in the beginning of the DSA, we got a lot of critique from people saying, yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair. And there was a 14-inch dog, for instance, gets his black star at 85 runs on the treadmill in 10 minutes. And that's his championship certificate. And he needs to have 10 to become a champion, right? in our sport. And he got that CC. Or not the CC, he got that black star, is what we call it. He got I'm missing the point a little bit now. It's the problem when you don't talk in your own language, Sean.
Oh, I get it.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, let me think back for a minute.
You were talking about uh, that people were saying that it wasn't fair, but you were kind of
Ah, yeah. I'm back at it. And then we say, well, the 18-inch plus dogs need to do 105 runs, and then they say that's not fair because they need to run more. And then we say, yeah, they got taller legs as well. So to make a fair competition, we are doing it like this, and they need to get it. Else they would have too much advantage. And then they say, but they can't get these numbers. And then and until today, I stand my ground, and I said, then you should improve them. And then they said, yeah, but it's not possible. I said, well, the 14-inch dog does it because at that time, a 14-inch dog called Quinlent Staffords, he became the ESA champion. Um, Quinlan Four Rose did 107. And when the small dog can do it, why can the big dog not do it? You should say, I got big dogs. You like big dogs. You say they're better. Well, okay, they have an advantage in that matter. Okay, let me see if they can get the black star. Now in the sports, the bigger dogs are improving, and it becomes piece of cake. There's even an Amstaff or a Pitbull. I don't know, and it's in Italy. Don't get me wrong on this. It's an Amstaff or a Pitbull, but they're doing 120.
wow.
So that's what we achieved with the sport.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they said it's not possible, and now the bigger dogs they make the same difference as the small dogs do, according to their size. So uh, phenomenal.
Yeah, and and you're saying, okay, you like big dogs, but if you want to be competitive, here's the markers. And
These are the
so
markets. Yeah,
and so you're telling these people here, okay, go back to into your genetics, figure out what's going to get you to this point,
exactly,
and you're going to get to this point, and you have the ability to have big dogs and get to this point.
exactly,
You just have to tweak, may make some tweaks and make decisions that you weren't going to make without having this little bit of critique and this knowledge that you wouldn't have until you put your feet to the fire as far as into this competition. Yeah, I love that. I really do. I find so much value in you not telling somebody your dog's not worthy or your style or you have no opinion. It may not be the type of dog that you would want or you think you would like, you know what I mean? But you're not telling, yeah. So I value that a lot, and it gives people, they don't have to let go of any kind of personal preference. They can just work towards,
Work, yes, work towards,
and
work
then
towards.
they can change their mind too.
But
If their goal is to get a dog to the highest performance level, and they say, you know what, these 18-inch dogs are just not going to get to the level that I want them to. I may need to start breeding to a 16-inch level. You know what I mean?
possibly,
Yeah,
possibly, I honor the ones that say I'm gonna make it happen with
yeah,
my 18-inch dogs,
I agree.
and I'm gonna work as long as until my preference can be as good as,
Yeah.
you know. And for that, it is that, for instance, is the markers within the championship that we have. They are not to the highest scores. It is what qualifies what a good 14-inch, 15-inch, up to 18-inch dog must be capable of.
Hmm.
If it must be capable of. It's not exceptional.
Yeah.
The scores are not in an exceptional range. They're just in the range. If they do it like that, they're good, healthy specimens.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the history of the sports, um, many dogs did 9 black stars where they needed 10,
Hmm.
and many failed on just one very simple discipline that it still had to be improved.
Hmm.
So um, those people who are still competing with their stock actually work towards dogs, and they improve that in their dogs.
Yeah.
And that's the reason behind this. That's what we want. That's what we want to achieve. That people are motivated, challenged to get the best out of what they have.
Hmm.
And if they can get the best out of what they have, they are starting to embrace a learning process about what the dog is about, and how the dog functions, and how it works, and how the senses correlate. Why you shouldn't want, for instance, which isn't a very big thing in Staffords, is that you see in certain groups, you see people liking dogs with rather big bulky heads, with the eyes set wide apart. And the wider the eyes are apart, the worse they are in uh, how do you say this, in understanding distance.
Mm.
So the wider the eyes are, the more difficult it is for them to grab a dummy high in the sky.
Hmm.
It's a very simple test. It's a very simple test. So um, it's one of the things that you say, oh, wait a second, is this really good? Is it really good? If the eyes, try to imagine this. You have from origin, you have a fighting dog, or even a hunting dog, doesn't really matter, who cannot calculate the distance from where it is to where it should be to get what he wants, what he needs to have. You have a useless dog. You have the dog that flies over the cow or shoots underneath, but it won't grab the nose. As simple as it is. And that's it. It's a very important thing. So when you test these dogs, you say, oh, wait a second, and then you come to a much more um, uh, finer structure of head shape, and then you learn. If people will get involved, you will learn that the big bulky heads are not the strong heads. That it's not the big head that bites, that has a tough bite. It's not how it works. My toughest biting dog I've ever had, and his name was Quinlent Glenmorangie. And if that mouth closes, that was like uh, it didn't it really closes with the intention to crush everything that came in it. And it didn't have a big head. It just had compared to Terry, he had a large head. compared to a bulldog, he had a very small head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you look at the first registered Staffordshire Bull Terrier, his name was Buller of Louis. He was of that shape. He was of that shape. Not too much, not too big on everything, but a lot of biting power in him. A lot of biting power in him. So that's what you learn when you get involved in sports. When you don't do the sports, when you don't see it, when you don't um, uh, when you don't witness it, you have no clue. You do not know. So then it becomes, why would you do something? Becomes a very difficult question.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes very difficult to explain why you are doing something. It's very difficult. So you need to understand. You need to dig in. You need to dig in deep to get to the point where you know why you are doing something.
Right.
And that's important in dogs. It's important in horses the same.
Yeah.
Well, in horses the money involved is a lot bigger as in dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's utterly amounts of monies are spent on a horse. Would you spend that money? Would you spend that money when there's no testimony?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so but no testimony.
Yeah.
It's the same in dogs.
Yeah.
If you want to have a top quality horse, it needs to be tested to get the testimony. If you want to have good dogs, it needs to be tested to get the testimony.
Yeah.
And that's as simple as it is. And I think that when more people try to realize that, they say, listen, to get good dogs, we should stop putting up the perfect picture photoshopped on the internet, but
Yeah.
we should get our feet in the mud and we should start working them to really understand their beauty. And then we come back to where we started.
Mm-hmm.
Beauty is not what you persevere, but it's what you feel when you're persevering.
Yeah.
And how can you not uh, um, uh, enjoy beauty more as than when something is what it really is,
Mm.
as simple as it is. And a dog is not meant to stand still on a leash. A dog is meant to move. All of them,
Mm-hmm.
all of them. So they should be on the move, and that's where you should enjoy them.
Yeah.
Get in the mud, go in the fields.
Yeah.
That's simple. Get away from the computer
Yeah.
or the cell phone.
Yeah. Right.
You said you had one you wanted to say for last. Which one was that?
Well, I think I want to save it for last because I want to do another one because we've already done 2 hours. I don't want to go on too much longer. There's two questions that I want to do for our next one. Is I want to talk more about your training
Yeah.
and how that has correlated your ability to help with your breeding.
Okay.
I think that I see people who actually are really good at training dogs and have done it at your level. Uh, it just seems to correlate really well in some weird way, and I don't. Maybe I'm off base.